Prairies in July are hot. Hot with wildflowers and hot from the sun. Yeah, prairies aren't very good to explore in the middle of the day. Hey, I'm the Iowa Prairie Girl. I'm coming to you from North Iowa, Saragordo County. This is my restored prairie, and it's early in the morning here. I don't know if you can just hear my rooster just crowed. If you want to go to a prairie, think about going before sunrise, not before sunrise, but early in the morning or around sunset, because in the middle of the day, they're pretty hot. And blazing. So hey, we're going to take a look at Blazingstar. My prairie here is about 20 years old, and this is the best year I've ever seen my prairie Blazingstar. So this is the entrance to my prairie. We got some cedar trees here for habitat, and then right out there is my restored prairie. And this just happens to be the spot where my husband comes to shuck the sweet corn, because it is July, and who doesn't eat sweet corn in Iowa in July? So if you want to learn more about Blazingstar, we're going to take a step out here into my prairie, and let's talk about Blazingstars. Let's start first by looking at the flower. So the flower is on top of a spike. So the plant itself can grow to between 2 to 5 feet tall. And it's just one singular spike. And towards the top part of the plant, you have the flower heads. So each plant here probably has several hundred flower heads. And they're these little flower heads right here. And then each one of those flower heads has between 5 to 10 florets, which is a complete flower in and of itself. And each one of these little flower heads has 5 to 10 of these little florets. And so the plant starts to bloom at the top, and it'll bloom for about a month, and it'll start to bloom here, and then as these die off, these start to bloom. So you can tell how long a plant's been blooming by how far along the blooms are. So if these start to die off and these are blooming, you know that it's been blooming for about a month. So each one of these little flower heads has these little florets, and they're a complete little flower, and they have 5 lobes, and they are star-shaped. And each one of those little star-shaped flowers has 2 styles coming out of it. So those are the reproductive parts of the plant. And you can see that as the styles protrude out, they kind of give the plant kind of a fuzzy or a feathery look. And that's one of the names for Blazingstar is gay feather. So it looks like a happy little feather. There are about 40 to 50 different types of native Blazingstars. And to distinguish this one from other ones, this is a Prairie Blazingstar. One of the tells is that it has these reddish, purplish bracts. And the bracts are like the buds, and they hold the flowers in place. So each of those little flowers has a bract. And they're narrow, and they're that reddish purple color. And they're narrow and they're curly, and they kind of curl back when the flower is in bloom. So that's one of the tells for Prairie Blazingstar. They're really hard to look at. I've got a couple pictures that I can show you. You really kind of got to zoom in to see those. Now each one of these little florets develop into a seed capsule, and so each plant here produces about 1,000 seeds. So when the seeds are mature, this will look like a tan, light brown fuzzy, and those seeds have that little tuft to them, little feathers to them, and they get blown around in the wind. So Prairie Blazingstar will reseed itself with its seeds, but it also has a root system that's called a corm, which is kind of like a little bulb. So some plants you'll see single by itself, and some of them will kind of be in a grouping. And so sometimes those corms, those little bulbs, will have some offsprings, and so you'll have some groupings of Prairie Blazingstar. All right, let's zoom down and look at the leaves. So the leaves of Prairie Blazingstar are very narrow, and they crowd. You can see just how they crowd up on the stem. So the basal or the bottom leaves, they can get to be kind of long. They can get between 10 to 12 inches long, and you can see that they're very narrow, and they have a very central vein going right down the middle of it. And as you can see, the leaves get smaller as they go up the stem, and they just really crowd around the stem. They are alternate, but they just kind of almost just circle around the whole stem. They have a very small, if any, stem to the leaf at all. And then the stem, you can see it's just a very erect plant. It doesn't branch off. The stem is a light green, almost a whitish green, and it has very fine hairs on it. Okay, I wanted to kind of give you a better look of my prairie here. You can see that Prairie Blazingstar is just a beautiful addition to any prairie. It's got that vibrant purple, rose-colored spikes that come up above the other plants. It's also just a natural bird feeder. Birds just love Prairie Blazingstar in the fall. Once those seeds come to mature, you'll have chickadees, finches, juncos, sparrows eating the seeds off your Prairie Blazingstar. As you can see, I got some other plants here around me. I just also had just a beautiful year for rattlesnake master. My husband, who doesn't know a lot of wildflowers, he just couldn't keep from coming out here to look at the rattlesnake master because we had so many of them. And I also have a video on rattlesnake master if you want to learn more about that plant. I also have right here in front of me, I got some stiff goldenrod that's starting to it'll bloom in about a couple weeks from here. Another video that you can watch on stiff goldenrod. Some other plants in my prairie that I have here, I've got wild bergamot, and some gray-headed coneflowers, and black-eyed Susans. So also some videos, all those you can find on my YouTube channel. So again, we got our blazing prairie star here. I said is a magnet for birds, but it's also a terrific pollinator. You've got all those little floret flowers, and each of those have pollen and nectar. And so long-tongued insects just thrive on any kind of blazing star, actually. Rough blazing star, which I don't have, but is in the Rock Falls Prairie. I have a video on that. And I have just seen butterflies just flock to blazing star. Rough blazing star at Rock Falls is just covered with monarchs later in the summer. So you have long-tongued insects, butterflies, moths, bumblebees. Bumblebees are the main pollinator to this plant. And so each of those little florets produce nectar and pollen, which just really attract the insects. And of course, the other bird that I forgot to mention is hummingbirds. Hummingbirds will thrive around blazing stars, and they come and help pollinate, but also benefit from the nectar that each plant produces. You will have other visitors to your blazing star. Rabbits will nibble on them, as well as some groundhogs. Deer, they might nibble on them, but they're pretty much deer tolerant. And then, as I mentioned, you have the corms, or the little roots, and the voles will visit them as well. So we have the name Blazing Star because each of these little florets looks like a little star. And then once they're all together in this spike, they're a blazing purple here out in the prairie, so Blazing Star. Another name for this plant is gay feather, and that's because it looks like a feather with all these little protruding styles sticking out. It gets really fluffy and it looks like a feather. And then gay because it's just really happy. And then we also have cattail. Cattail Blazing Star. I think I got that right. Yeah, cattail gay feather because it looks like a cattail. We also have tall Blazing Star. The plant itself gets to be about 2 to 5 feet tall. This one's a real tall one here out in my prairie. And then we also have thick spike Blazing Star, thick spike gay feather, because these florets are packed in here on their flower heads. These flower heads are really dense in here. Prairie stars like full sun. You're going to find them right out in the middle of a prairie. You might find them along the edge of the woods, but it's probably because they get a lot of sun there. They also like good soil. You're not going to find blazing stars along railroad tracks or in a disturbed area. You're going to find them in a high quality area. They like well-balanced moisture. They can tolerate a little bit of extra moisture, but they really kind of like just that well-balanced area. They will tolerate a drought, especially a mature plant. They can tolerate a dry spell. If you have a young prairie star, chances are it might not survive a drought. A little bit of folklore here. Another name for this plant is button snakeroot, and that has to do with that the Native Americans and earlier settlers would use the corm from the plant to cure a poisonous snake bite. Another name for this plant is colic root. And again, that's the Native Americans and early settlers would use the root from this plant to make a tea, and they would use it to calm stomach aches and cramps or intestinal pain. Liatris is the scientific name for blazing star, and interesting enough, the origin or the meaning of that name has kind of been lost to history. Not quite sure why that word was used. Blazing stars are a symbol of resilience, a symbol of happiness and joy and energy, and they really do give your prairie, and there's Prairie Dog, they really do give your prairie just a blaze of joy. They're just, you come out and you're walking through a prairie and you see purple blazing star, prairie blazing star, sticking out amongst the other flowers, and it really does give you that kind of joy to see a blazing star. I just had a butterfly flying through here. Wish I could have got a picture of it. So they are a magnet, just a magnet to insects, butterflies, hummingbirds, and then again, they're just your natural bird feeder in the fall. Okay, well it is July in Iowa. It's starting to get warm out. The dogs are starting to get a little hot. There's Prairie Dog behind some rattlesnake master. Thanks for watching my video. Again, you can subscribe, click that subscribe button, share it with your friends, and as I mentioned, many of these flowers here, I have videos on those as well. So I hope that you get a chance. Get out to the prairies, perhaps plan a trip earlier in the day or after supper, and get out and see some blazing star and some of the other wonderful wildflowers that are blooming here in Iowa. I hope that when you get out, you see something wonderful. Thanks for your support. I talked a lot today about how insects and butterflies and bumblebees all love prairie blazing star. And hey, if you want to teach your kids or your grandchildren about pollinators and wildflowers, I do have 2 children's books out that you might enjoy. My first one is Gentian Wakes the Mason Bees. And in this book, my little hero, Gentian the Prairie Fairy, she discovers that the mason bees haven't woken up from their wintertime nap, and she's worried about the mason bees and also about the early buttercups at the park where she lives. They haven't been pollinated yet. And so in this book, you learn all about early buttercups and mason bees, one of our native pollinators, through the adventures of Gentian the Prairie Fairy and her little friend, her best friend, Rooster. And then in my second book, Gentian Helps the Monarchs. Again, we have Prairie the Prairie Fairy, and she meets a monarch butterfly that's having a hard time finding common milkweed at the park that she lives in. And so in this book, you learn all about the monarch butterfly and its relationship with common milkweed. So you have both my books here, Gentian Wakes the Mason Bees and Gentian Helps the Monarchs. You can find them both on Amazon, or better yet, have your local bookstore order them for you and ask them to stock them on your shelf. Again, thank you for your support.